Welcome back to the Angry Man Podcast with Jason and Greg. So big news coming out of the WBC, which is the winner of David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade will become the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez, which is quite interesting considering that David Benavidez has been the mandatory for the last 2 years. I'm struggling with this, Jay, that this news was something that came out of the WBC convention. They wanted to make sure that they reiterated that the winner would be the mandatory. What does it mean to be the mandatory if you never enforce it? It means absolutely nothing. If I'm not mistaken, David Benavidez was already a mandatory prior to the Caleb Plant fight. He fought Caleb, and he still didn't get the opportunity. Now he's fighting Demetrius Andrade. And depending on who wins, maybe it'll be Demetrius Andrade, maybe it'll be David Benavidez. But I still doubt that they actually enforce Canelo to actually fight as mandatory. I'm so challenged with that. They keep talking about the same thing in regards to the 168 pound division, and we want to see movement in that division. Now, Demetrius Andrade versus David Benavidez is an excellent fight. I'm actually shocked and surprised that David was willing to actually take on Demetrius Andrade. It's just something that I was not expecting from David Benavidez. But, he's up for all these challenges, and he's not sitting and waiting around, similar to what Antonio Tarver said about all those guys that are at 168 pounds. He's like, hey, don't sit around and wait for Canelo Alvarez. Keep going out there and fighting and making a name for yourself. You're going to keep earning a payday. And eventually you'll position yourself where the guy's not going to have a choice but to fight you, because there's going to be so much pressure on you, or on him rather, to make the actual fight. So I don't know. We'll see what the WBC does. The WBC, they've been doing a lot of strange things here. The 50 demanding a 50-50 split with Devin when he's the champion versus Shakur Stevenson. All the stuff that they've been doing with Canelo Alvarez. The fact that they were going to allow Errol Spence to face Keith Thurman at 154 while defending his title at 147. Like, it's just a bunch of strange stuff that the WBC is currently doing, Jay. So what's your thoughts in regards to the WBC reiterating that they will be the mandatory for Canelo Alvarez when we already know that David Benavidez has been a mandatory for the last 2 years? What's your thoughts?
They ain't gonna do nothing. I mean, it's already been rumored before that Canelo is going to be fighting possibly Jaime Munguia, in May. So, I mean, that throws that out the window. And to your point, David's been the mandatory for like 2 years. And he's been a mandatory in multiple weight classes. So has Boo Boo. So, I mean, they're going to let Canelo do what Canelo does. And that's always controlling the narrative, fighting the people that aren't the biggest threat for him at that point in time. And this is not to say that I think that he would lose to David. I think he'll probably beat David right now, depending on how David looks at next week against Boo Boo. I think it'll be a good fight though. But it's a disservice to David and Boo Boo if Boo Boo beats David that they don't get the actual fight. It's just ridiculous that they just try to act tough. Oh, yeah, we're reiterating this is the interim championship, so he's the mandatory. That don't mean jack if you don't enforce it. Y'all ain't been enforcing nothing. I would say Draymond Green's a better enforcer than they are. And that's pathetic because he ain't no enforcer in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, it's a nothing burger. I feel that David, if he wins against Boo Boo, he's going to be overlooked. If Boo Boo wins, he's going to be overlooked. So whoever wins the fight next week between David and Boo Boo, they're not going to get the fight. They're going to say, well, they need to fight. Who they fought? They need to fight somebody. They did what they're supposed to do to be the intern and mandatory. Now they deserve to get their shot at the champion. Point blank, period. Plus, in all honesty, if David wins against Boo Boo and he would set up to fight Canelo in May, that fight would go bananas. It would sell like crazy. So I don't know why they want to do. Well, I know why, because Canelo's team is like, nah, not yet. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to fight Mexicans anymore. Oh, but I'll fight Jaime Munguia. When I say I want to fight Mexican, I mean a Mexican Ecuadorian, not a real Mexican, a full-blooded Mexican. That's not what I meant. So this WBC coming out saying that it ain't gonna change nothing. I really don't think nothing's gonna happen next in May. Canelo's ain't gonna fight Jaime Munguia unless Jaime Munguia loses to John Ryder. Then John Ryder might even get another shot for a second fight with Canelo. Undeservedly. So it's a nothing burger by the WBC.
Yeah, it is, man. And like I mentioned before, they have been all over the place. I can't make heads or tails of what's going on with the WBC. As a matter of fact, I can't make heads or tails of any of the sanctioning bodies and what they're doing currently, outside of the fact that Terrence Crawford was stripped.
No consistency.
That makes perfect sense to me. But yeah, these guys, they gotta reward these guys at 168. They gotta reward whoever the winner is of this fight. You got two individuals, in my personal opinion, who have been avoided at 160 and 168 for quite some time. Andrade was avoided at 160. Canelo was there, to your point. He was the mandatory for Canelo. Canelo said, "You're a terrible fighter, terrible.
You just want to pay me.
You're terrible." So, and I we know that Andrade is not a terrible fighter, right? Is he the most entertaining fighter? I wouldn't say that, but he's certainly not a terrible fighter. And since he's been at 168, he's been avoiding David Benavidez. I mean, we said that for a while. And there's people that are, Canelo fans that going to get upset with this. I think Canelo beats Andrade. I think he possibly beats David Benavidez too. We want to see the fight, and they get mad because we want to see the fight. Like, clearly you're avoiding when you've been at these weight classes for this long and you haven't fought them. But you know what? I can't say that he's necessarily avoiding Benavidez because the WBC, the sanctioning body, hasn't forced them to actually do anything. So is he technically avoiding them? If the sanctioning bodies aren't forcing them to do anything. Now, Canelo. And this is to be fair to Canelo because we gave Errol Spence the same grace. While he in his Euro diet, he fought a lot of guys that had titles, right? He was unifying some of those titles in some of those fights. So you got to give him grace in that regard. But still, he was unifying with some of those fights. Some of those fights, those were unification fights. So you got to give him grace in that regard. But we want to see Canelo in the ring with the best fighters, and I think the winner of this fight at 168 will be, the other best fighter in the division. We want to see him fight. So, Jay, anything else you want to share with the people before we move on to the next?
If he don't fight the winner of David Benavidez and Andrade in May, he needs to be stripped of the WBC.
Facts. You guys tell us what you think in the comment section in regards to what the WBC has reiterated. We're reiterating. He will be the mandatory. Don't forget to hate, like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Angry Man Podcast at M Sports Media, and we are